The great hall of Nexus Prime stretched before them like a cathedral of fear. Representatives from 847 different species sat in perfect silence, their various forms of breathing creating a strange symphony of terror. Some had scales, others had fur, and a few existed as pure energy contained in crystal shells, but they all shared one thing in common. They were all afraid. At the center of the massive chamber stood a holographic display showing the current state of the galaxy. Red zones covered most of the map. Each red zone represented a star system under the control of the Vrex Empire. The small patches of blue and green that remained free seemed to shrink every time someone looked at them. Ambassador Kelthrin of the Altarian Council stepped forward on his 6 legs. His translator device flickered as he spoke to the assembled crowd. Fellow beings, we gather here today because we may be witnessing the end of free civilization as we know it. A wave of nervous chittering and clicking filled the air. The translator devices worked overtime to convert the sounds into understandable speech for each species. In the past solar cycle alone, the Vrex have conquered 15 more systems. Kelthrin continued. The Zephyrian defense fleet lasted exactly 4 hours. The crystalline collective surrendered without firing a single shot. The pattern is always the same. In the viewing galleries above, news reporters from various free worlds recorded everything. This meeting would be broadcast across the remaining free systems, though many wondered if there would be anyone left to watch it. How do they do it? Asked Representative Mylar, her blue skin shimmering with anxiety. Our combined fleets should be able to stop them. We have superior numbers. Elder Voss of the Thorian Republic stood up slowly. His ancient form moved with the weight of someone who had lived through 3 major galactic wars. Numbers mean nothing against the Vrex. I have studied their methods for decades. They do not simply conquer worlds. They break the spirit of entire civilizations. The holographic display changed to show recordings from recent Vrex conquests. The images were difficult to watch. Massive ships, each one the size of a small moon, appeared at the edge of star systems. The ships themselves seemed to be made of some dark metal that absorbed light rather than reflecting it. They give every species the same choice, Elder Voss explained. Submit completely and become slaves, or resist and face total destruction. Most choose slavery, and those who resist? Asked someone from the back of the hall. The display showed the remains of the Corvan system. Where once there had been 6 populated planets, now there was only debris floating in space. Billions of beings had lived there just months ago. The Corvans chose to fight, Voss said quietly. This is what remains of their civilization. Silence fell over the assembly again. The weight of their situation pressed down on everyone present. The Vrex Empire had been expanding for over 1,000 years. In all that time, no species had successfully resisted them for more than a few months. Far away from Nexus Prime, in the deepest regions of Vrex space, Overlord Vrex Prime stood before his own display. Unlike the fearful gathering of the free species, this chamber radiated power and confidence. The walls were covered with trophies taken from conquered worlds. Weapons, artwork, and even preserved specimens from extinct species decorated the massive room. Vrex Prime himself was a sight that had caused entire armies to surrender without fighting. Standing 12 feet tall, his body was covered in natural armor plating that had evolved over millions of years. His claws could cut through most known metals, and his jaw could crush bone with ease. But it was his eyes that truly terrified his enemies. They held the cold intelligence of a perfect predator. Report, he commanded, his voice a low rumble. That seemed to shake the floor. Scout Vrex Nix approached carefully. Even among his own kind, Vrex Prime inspired fear. My lord, the Outer Rim surveys are nearly complete. We have identified 17 more systems suitable for conquest. Excellent. Begin preparations for the next wave of expansion. There is one anomaly, my lord. Nix hesitated before continuing. Our deep space sensors have detected signs of advanced civilization in a system that was not included in our original galactic survey. Vrex Prime turned his massive head toward the scout. Explain. The system is located in the outer spiral. arm far from the galactic core. It appears we somehow missed it during our initial expansion phase centuries ago. The energy signatures suggest a species with significant technological development. How significant? Difficult to determine without closer investigation, my lord. However, they appear to have achieved faster than light travel and have established colonies on multiple worlds within their system. General Vrex Turk, the Supreme Military Commander, stepped forward. His scarred hide told the story of 1,000 battles across the galaxy. My lord, shall I prepare a standard conquest fleet? Vrex Prime was quiet for a long moment. In all their years of expansion, they had never encountered a species they had simply missed. Their initial galactic surveys had been thorough. Every star system had been cataloged and evaluated for potential threats or resources. This is unusual, he finally said. A species advanced enough for interstellar travel, hidden in a system we overlooked. I find myself curious about these beings. Shall I dispatch a reconnaissance force? Turk asked. No. Vrex Prime moved too. The star chart that dominated one wall of the chamber. I will handle this personally. Prepare the Imperial fleet. Scout Nix felt a chill run through his body. The Imperial fleet was reserved for only the most dangerous threats. It had not been deployed in over 2 centuries. My lord, surely a single overlooked species does not require such overwhelming force, General Turk said carefully. Perhaps not, Vrex Prime replied, but I am curious. How does a species remain hidden from us for so long? What makes them different from all the others we have conquered? I intend to find out. The orders went out across Vrex space within hours. The Imperial fleet began assembling at the edge of known space. 200 of the most advanced warships in the galaxy, each one capable of destroying entire civilizations, prepared for departure. Meanwhile, in the mysterious outer rim system that had caught their attention, the inhabitants went about their daily lives completely unaware of the storm that was heading their way. They had never heard of the Vrex Empire. They had no idea that their galaxy was mostly under the control of a species that viewed all other life as either slaves or obstacles to be destroyed. The beings in this hidden system called themselves humans. They lived on a small blue world that orbited an ordinary yellow star. They had indeed achieved faster than light travel, just as the Vrex scouts had detected. They had established colonies on several worlds and moons within their system. But the Vrex had missed something important in their long-range scans. These humans had spent their entire evolutionary history fighting. Not just fighting external threats, but fighting each other. Their world had seen countless wars, and their species had learned hard lessons about survival, strategy, and sacrifice. As the massive Vrex fleet prepared to depart for what they assumed would be a routine conquest. None of them suspected they were about to encounter something completely outside their experience. They had conquered hundreds of species, but they had never met one that had been forged in the fires of constant warfare. The universe was about to change. Though neither side knew it yet, on Nexus Prime the assembly of free species continued. Their desperate discussions about how to resist the Vrex expansion. They spoke of unity and cooperation, of combining their fleets and technologies. But deep down, most of them knew it was probably too late. None of them knew that somewhere in the outer rim of the galaxy, an unknown species was about to face the test that would determine the fate of all free civilizations. The humans had no idea. They were about to become the galaxy's last hope. The stage was set for a confrontation that would reshape the balance of power in the universe. The first sign of trouble came at exactly 0347 hours, ship time. Lieutenant Beijun was monitoring the deep space sensors aboard Defense Station Alpha when his screen suddenly filled with contacts. Not 1 or 2 unknown ships, but hundreds of them. Captain Lee, he called out, his voice steady despite the impossible readings on his display. You need to see this. Captain Lee Haiyan moved quickly to the sensor station. At 35 years old, he had spent half his life in space defending the outer colonies. He had seen asteroid swarms, rogue comets, and even the occasional pirate fleet, but he had never seen anything like this. How many? He asked. Computer says 214 contacts, sir, all of them massive. The smallest one is bigger than our largest battleship. Dr. Park Soo looked up from her research station where she had been studying mineral samples from the asteroid belt. As the station's chief science officer, she was responsible for analyzing any unknown phenomena. Could it be a natural formation? Maybe a cluster of asteroids? Lieutenant Bay shook his head. No, ma'am, these are definitely artificial. And they're moving in formation. Captain Lee activated the station's communication system. All hands, this is the captain. We have unknown contacts approaching the system. Battle stations, this is not a drill. Throughout Defense Station Alpha, alarms began to sound. The crew of 300 moved with practiced efficiency to their combat positions. In the hangar bay, pilots ran to their fighters. In the weapon bays, gunners loaded the massive rail cannons that protected the outer system. Send a message to Earth Command, Lee ordered. Tell them we have unknown contacts, possibly hostile, entering the system. Commander Kim Woo, the station's tactical officer, was already working at his station. Sir, I'm reading energy signatures unlike anything in our database. These ships are using some kind of propulsion system we've never seen before. The unknown fleet continued its approach toward the inner system. As they got closer, the human sensors began to pick up more details. The ships were dark, almost black, and seemed to absorb rather than reflect the light from the system's sun. They're beautiful, whispered Engineer Cho Yeon from her position at the engineering station. Look at those hull designs. The technology must be incredible. Beautiful or not, they're heading straight for Earth, Commander Kim replied. At their current speed, they'll reach Mars orbit in 6 hours. Captain Lee made a decision that would change the course of human history. Open a channel on all frequencies. Let's see if they want to talk. The communication system activated, sending a broad spectrum signal toward the approaching fleet. Unknown vessels, this is Captain Lee Haeon of the Human Defense Force. You are entering human space. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions. For several minutes, there was no response. The alien fleet continued its steady approach toward the inner planets. Then suddenly, every communication device on the station came alive with a transmission unlike anything they had ever heard. The voice that came through was deep and rumbling, like distant thunder. When the translation computers finally processed it, the words sent a chill through everyone who heard them. Primitive beings of this system, I am General Vrex Turk of the Vrex Empire. You will surrender immediately and unconditionally. Any resistance will result in the complete destruction of your species. You have 1 hour to respond. The transmission ended, leaving the station in complete silence. Dr. Park Soo was the first to speak. Vrex Empire. I've never heard that name before. Have we ever encountered this species? No, Captain Lee replied. Check the xenobiology database. See if there's any record of them. While Dr. Park searched through humanity's limited knowledge of alien species, Commander Kim was analyzing the tactical situation. Sir, based on their ship sizes and energy readings, we're severely outgunned. Even if we combined every military vessel in the system, we'd be outnumbered 20-1. What about evacuation? Asked Engineer Cho. How long would it take to evacuate Earth? The question hung in the air like a death sentence. Everyone knew the answer. Earth had over 8 billion people. The entire human fleet couldn't evacuate even a fraction of them in the time they had. Captain Lee looked around at his crew. These were good people, trained professionals who had dedicated their lives to protecting humanity. They deserved to know what they were facing. I won't lie to you, he said. This doesn't look good. But we faced impossible odds before. Our ancestors fought against superior enemies and survived. We're still here because they refused to give up. Dr. Park looked up from her computer. Captain, I found something. The computer detected trace elements in their ship hulls that match materials from the Tau Ceti system. But Tau Ceti was supposed to be uninhabited. Maybe it was, Commander Kim said grimly. Maybe these Vrex wiped out whoever lived there. The implications of that statement settled over the crew like a dark cloud. If this Rex Empire had destroyed other civilizations, then humanity might be facing enemies with experience in genocide. Sir, Lieutenant Bay called out, "I'm detecting movement from the alien fleet. They're changing formation." On the main screen, the Rex ships began to spread out across space. It was clearly a battle formation, designed to surround and overwhelm any opposition. "How much time do we have left?" Captain Lee asked. 43 minutes until their deadline. Commander Kim replied. Captain Lee activated the communication system again. This time, he wasn't just speaking to the alien fleet. His words were being broadcast throughout human space, to every ship, every station, and every world where humans lived. "General Turk of the Rex Empire, this is Captain Lee Hyan, I speak. For all of humanity when I say this. We don't know who you are or where you come from. We don't know what gives you the right to demand our surrender. But we do know this. This is human space. You are not welcome here." He paused for a moment, looking around at his crew. They were nodding, showing their support for what he was about to say. "We will not surrender. We will not abandon our worlds. If you want to destroy us, you'll have to fight for it. And I promise you this, we won't make it easy." The response from the Rex fleet came immediately. General Turk's voice filled the communication channels again, but this time there was something different in his tone. Surprise, perhaps, or confusion. "You choose destruction over slavery. This is unexpected. Very well. You will learn why the galaxy fears the Rex Empire." The alien ships began to move toward Mars, where the main human battle fleet was stationed. Admiral Yang Min, the commander of humanity's space forces, had been listening to the entire exchange. His ships were already moving to intercept. "All units, this is Admiral Yang," his voice came over the fleet communication system. "Today we face an enemy unlike any we've fought before. They think we're just another species to be conquered or destroyed. They're about to learn they're wrong." The first battle between humanity and the Rex Empire was about to begin. In the space around Mars, 30 human warships prepared to face 200 alien vessels of superior technology and firepower. Park Su was frantically analyzing every piece of data they had gathered about the Rex ships, looking for any weakness they could exploit. Engineer Cho Yan was pushing the station's weapon systems beyond their design limits, trying to give their forces any possible advantage. Commander Kim Woo watched the tactical display as the two fleets approached each other. "Sir, the human fleet is moving to engage. Estimated time to contact, 12 minutes. Captain Lee Hyan stood in the center of his command station, surrounded by his crew. They were about to witness the most important battle in human history. The outcome would determine whether humanity survived as a free species or disappeared entirely. "All stations, prepare for battle," he ordered. "This is for everyone we've ever loved, everyone we've ever lost, and everyone who will come after us. Make it count." The space around Mars lit up with weapons fire as two very different species met in combat for the first time. Neither side knew it yet, but this battle would be remembered as the beginning of the end for the most feared empire in galactic history. The debris field around Mars told the story of the first battle between humans and the Rex Empire. Twisted metal from both human and alien ships drifted in the cold vacuum of space. But the numbers told a different story than what anyone had expected. General Rex Turk stood in his command chamber, staring at the battle report with growing disbelief. 30 human ships had faced his fleet of 200. By all logic, it should have been a massacre. The humans should have been destroyed within minutes. Instead, he had lost 37 vessels. "How?" he demanded of his tactical officer. "How? Did these primitives destroy 37 of our ships?" "Sir, they fight unlike any species we have encountered," the officer replied nervously. "They do not retreat when facing superior numbers. They do not panic when their ships are damaged. Some of their vessels continued fighting even after taking mortal damage." Turk turned away from the battle report and moved to the observation deck. Through the reinforced viewing port, he could see the wreckage of human ships floating nearby. But he could also see the twisted remains of Rex vessels, their dark hulls torn open by human weapons. "Send a message to Overlord Prime," he ordered. "Tell him we need reinforcements." It was the first time in Vrex military history that a general had requested additional forces for what was supposed to be a routine conquest on Earth. Admiral Youngmin sat in the emergency command center deep beneath the Korean peninsula. The room buzzed with activity as military personnel from every nation worked together to coordinate humanity's defense. "Damage report," Yang ordered. Colonel Park Jin stepped forward with a tablet full of data. "We lost 18 ships in the engagement, sir, but our surviving vessels managed to return with valuable intelligence about Vrex technology and tactics." "What did we learn?" Dr. Park Soo, who had been transferred to Earth Command after the first battle, activated a holographic display showing a Vrex warship. "Their ships are incredibly powerful, but they're also predictable. They rely entirely on overwhelming firepower and heavy armor. They don't seem to understand the concept of tactical maneuvering." Engineer Cho Young, who had also been reassigned to the defense effort, added her analysis. "Their weapons are energy-based and extremely destructive, but they have a charging cycle that creates brief windows of opportunity. If we can exploit those gaps, we can inflict serious damage." Yang studied the holographic ship rotating in front of him. "What about their defenses?" "Strong against direct assault," Cho replied, "but they seem designed to fight enemies who attack. Head-on, our fighters were able to slip through their defensive screens by using irregular approach patterns." Commander Kim Woo, now serving as Yang's chief tactical advisor, pointed to specific areas on the hologram. "The most important thing we learned is that they can be hurt. These Vrex aren't invincible. They've just never faced an enemy that refused to fight by their rules." Meanwhile, deep in Vrex space, Elder Vrex Gull was conducting his own analysis of the humans. At over 800 years old, he was the Empire's chief strategist and historian. No species had ever puzzled him as much as these creatures from the Outer Rim. "Fascinating," he muttered as he reviewed the battle recordings. "Absolutely fascinating." Scout Vrex Nix approached the Elder's study chamber. "Sir, you requested all available data on the human species?" "Yes, what have you discovered?" Nix activated a data display showing images of Earth. "Their world appears to be a paradise, sir. Abundant water, fertile land, diverse ecosystems. It should have produced a peaceful, cooperative species, but it didn't," Gull observed. "No, sir. Our analysis of their historical data shows constant warfare. They have fought each other continuously throughout their development. Wars over territory, resources, ideology, even concepts we don't fully understand." Elder Gull studied the human historical records with growing interest. "Show me their military development." The display changed to show human weapons and tactics throughout their history. From simple clubs to nuclear weapons, from individual combat to massive organized armies. They have spent their entire existence learning how to fight, Gull realized. Not just how to fight external threats, but how to fight each other. "Look at this complexity. Multiple strategies, deception, sacrifice for tactical advantage. Is that significant, sir?" "Very significant. We have conquered species across the galaxy, but most of them developed in relative peace. They had conflicts, yes, but nothing like this. These humans have been forged by war." Nix looked confused. "But sir, that should make them easier to defeat, not harder. If they fight among themselves, they must be naturally aggressive and disorganized." Elder Gull shook his massive head. "You misunderstand. They fight each other because they understand the value of what they're fighting for. Look at these records. They have concepts like honor, freedom, sacrifice for others. They will die for ideas that exist only in their minds." Back on Earth, Captain Lee Hyun was leading a briefing for all ship commanders who had survived the first battle. The meeting was taking place in the same defense station where he had first encountered the Vrex fleet. "What we learned out there," he began, "is that these Vrex fight like a machine. Very powerful, very efficient, but completely predictable. They expect their enemies to either surrender immediately or fight in straight lines like targets in a shooting gallery." Captain Song Min, commander of the destroyer engine, raised her hand. "Sir, their ships are still much more powerful than ours. How do we overcome that advantage?" Lee activated a tactical display showing the battle around Mars. We don't try to match their firepower. We use speed, maneuvering, and surprise. Look at this moment in the battle. The display showed a human fighter squadron breaking formation and attacking a Vrex battleship from 6 different directions simultaneously. They didn't know how to respond, Lee explained. Their defensive systems are designed to track and destroy targets approaching in predictable patterns. When our pilots attacked from random angles, their computers couldn't keep up. Dr. Park Soo stood up to address the group. I've been analyzing the wreckage we recovered. The Vrex technology is impressive, but it's also rigid. Everything is designed for one specific purpose. Their weapons are built to destroy large, heavily armored targets. Their shields are designed to stop direct frontal assaults. What does that mean for us? Asked another captain. It means they've been fighting the same kind of war for so long, they've forgotten there are other ways to fight, Park replied. Every species they've conquered has probably used similar tactics. Heavy ships, direct engagement, surrender when losses become too high. Engineer Cho Yun activated another display showing human ship modifications. We're adapting our technology based on what we learned. Faster engines, more maneuverable weapons, better coordination systems. We're turning our ships into something they've never faced before. Captain Lee looked around the room at his fellow officers. The Vrex think they understand war because they've won so many battles, but they've only fought one kind of war. We've been fighting each other for thousands of years. We know dozens of ways to win. The meeting continued for hours as the human commanders shared their observations and developed new strategies. They talked about hit-and-run tactics, about using the enemy's strength against them, about fighting smart instead of fighting hard. Vrex Space, General Turk was having a very different kind of meeting with his senior officers. The mood in the command chamber was tense and confused. These humans are not behaving according to established patterns, complained War Leader Vrex Cole. They should have surrendered after losing half their fleet. Instead, they appear to be preparing for continued resistance. Perhaps they are simply stupid, suggested another officer. Too primitive to understand that resistance is futile. General Turk had been thinking about the battle for days, and he was beginning to suspect something far more dangerous than stupidity. No, they're not stupid, they're different. Everything we know about conquest assumes that our enemies want to survive above all else. These humans seem to value something more than survival. What could be more important than survival? Ascol.Tark didn't have an answer to that question. In Vrex society, survival and dominance were the only things that mattered. The idea that a species might choose death over submission was completely foreign to their understanding. Send another message to Overlord Prime, Turk ordered. Tell him that this conquest will require different methods. These humans are not like the others. As both sides prepared for the next phase of their conflict, neither fully understood what they were facing. The Vrex saw humans as an anomaly that could be corrected with sufficient force. The humans saw the Vrex as just another enemy to be defeated, not realizing they were facing the most successful military empire in galactic history. But some on both sides were beginning to understand that this war would be unlike any that had come before. The universe's deadliest species had finally met their match, and neither side was prepared for what would happen next. The news reached Overlord Vrex Prime at the worst possible time. He was meeting with representatives from 12 conquered species, collecting tribute and discussing expansion plans when Scout Nix entered the chamber with an urgent message. My Lord, we have received disturbing reports from General Turk. Vrex Prime dismissed the alien representatives with a wave of his massive claw. When they were alone, he turned his full attention to the scout. Speak. The humans have begun attacking our supply lines, my lord. 3 convoys have been destroyed in the past week. They are using small, fast ships that strike without warning and disappear before our forces can respond. Impossible, Vrex. Prime growled. Our supply routes are protected by battle groups. No single species has ever dared to attack them. It appears these humans dare many things others would not, my lord. Rex Prime studied the tactical display that showed the recent attacks. The pattern was unlike anything in Vrek's military experience. Instead of massing their forces for large battles, the humans were scattered across space in small groups, hitting targets of opportunity. Where is General Turk now? Pursuing one of the human raiding groups through the Kepler system, my lord. He has requested additional ships to guard our supply lines. For the first time in centuries, Vrex Prime felt something unfamiliar. It took him a moment to recognize the emotion as concern. Double the convoy escorts. And send word to Elder Gull. I want a complete analysis of human military capabilities. Meanwhile, in the asteroid belt of the human system, Captain Lee Haeon piloted his modified fighter through a maze of floating rocks. Behind him, 3 more human ships followed in perfect formation. They had been stalking a Vrex supply convoy for 2 days, waiting for the right moment to strike. Target acquired, reported Lieutenant Beijun from the ship behind him. 1 heavy transport, 2 escort vessels. Remember the plan? Lee said over the communication channel. Hit fast, hit hard, then disappear. We're not here to win a battle. We're here to make them afraid. The human ships accelerated out of the asteroid field like bullets fired from a gun. The Vrex escorts detected them immediately, but the humans were already too close. Lee's ship fired a spread of missiles at the transport while the others targeted the escorts. The attack lasted exactly 90 seconds. When it was over, the Vrex convoy was debris floating in space and the human ships were gone, vanishing back into the asteroid field before reinforcements could arrive. Another successful hunt, Lee said with satisfaction. That makes 12 convoys this month. Dr. Park Soo, monitoring the operation from a hidden base on one of the larger asteroids, smiled as she watched the tactical display. The Vrex are starting to change their patrol patterns. They're becoming more cautious. Good, replied Engineer Cho Yun, who was working on modifications to their ships. Caution makes them slower. Slower enemies are easier to avoid. The human strategy was working. Instead of trying to match Vrex firepower with larger ships, they had embraced the opposite approach. Small, fast vessels that could strike anywhere and vanish. The Vrex, who had built their empire on overwhelming force, had no experience fighting an enemy they couldn't pin down, but the real surprise was still to come. On the other side of the galaxy, on a world called Zarian Prime, something unprecedented was happening. The Zarians had been slaves to the Vrex Empire for over 200 years. Their planet provided rare minerals essential to Vrex technology. Commander Kim Woo's voice crackled through a hidden communication device in the Zarian underground tunnels. People of Zarian, this is the Human Defense Force. We know you can hear this message. We know you've been waiting for hope. In the darkness of the mines, thousands of Zarian workers stopped their labor to listen. They had heard rumors of a species that was actually fighting the Vrex and winning battles. The Vrex are not invincible, Kim continued. They can be hurt, they can be defeated, we've proven that. But we cannot free the galaxy alone, we need your help. Elder Zarian Molt, the unofficial leader of the resistance movement, translated the message for those who didn't understand the galactic common language. The humans are offering to share their military knowledge with us. They want to coordinate attacks across multiple systems. Is it possible? Asked one of the younger Zarians. Can we really fight back? These humans destroyed 37 Vrex warships in their first battle, Molt replied. If they can do that, perhaps we can learn to fight as well. Within days, similar messages were being broadcast to enslaved species across the galaxy. The humans were doing something no conquered race had ever attempted. They were actively encouraging rebellion. General Vrex Turk was beginning to understand the magnitude of the problem. Standing in his command center, he watched as reports came. And from across the Empire, minor uprisings on 7 different worlds. Supply convoys under attack in 12 systems. Slave populations refusing to work in 3 major mining operations. How are they coordinating this? He demanded of his intelligence officers. The humans are supposedly confined to their own system, yet somehow they're communicating with rebels across the galaxy? We believe they are using captured Vrex communication equipment, sir, replied Intelligence Officer Vrex Nax. They may have modified it to broadcast on frequencies we don't monitor. Then monitor all frequencies. Yes, sir. However, the rebel messages are encrypted using codes we cannot break. The humans appear to have superior knowledge of information security. Turk felt a growing sense of unease. The Empire had always maintained control through isolation. Conquered species were kept separate, unable to communicate with each other, unaware that resistance was possible. The humans were destroying that isolation. "Sir," another officer reported, "we're receiving a priority message from the Altair system. The mining operations there have completely stopped. The slave population has barricaded themselves in the facilities. Send a battle group to restore order." "Sir, we already have battle groups responding to 17 other uprisings. Our forces are becoming scattered." For the first time in his military career, General Turk was facing a war on multiple fronts. The Vrex military had never been designed for this kind of conflict. They were built to crush single targets with overwhelming force, not to fight dozens of small rebellions simultaneously on Earth. Admiral Young Min stood before a gathering of human military leaders and scientists. The meeting was taking place in the deepest bunker on the planet, protected by layers of armor and defensive systems. "Phase 1 of our strategy is working," he announced. "We've disrupted their supply lines and encouraged uprisings across their empire. But now we need to move to Phase 2. Dr. Park Soo activated a holographic display showing the Vrex Empire. Red dots marked locations of known uprisings and human attacks. The Vrex are spreading their forces thin, trying to maintain control. This is our opportunity to strike at their heart." "What do you mean?" asked Captain Song Min. Engineer Cho Yun stepped forward. "We've been analyzing captured Vrex technology for months. We think we've found a way to hurt them badly. But it will require a direct assault on one of their major fleet bases." "That sounds like suicide," observed Commander Kim Woo. "Maybe," Yang admitted. "But if we can destroy a significant portion of their fleet in one attack, we might break their ability to suppress the rebellions. The enslaved species would see that the Vrex can be truly defeated, not just annoyed." Captain Lee Hyun, who had become the unofficial leader of the human raiding forces, studied the tactical display. "Which target?" "The Kronos fleet base," Yang replied. "It's where they build and repair their largest warships. If we could destroy it, we'd eliminate dozens of ships and cripple their ability to replace losses." "How do we get past their defenses?" Dr. Park smiled. "We don't fight our way past them. We sneak past them. The Vrex have never faced an enemy that uses stealth technology. They don't know how to defend against something they can't see." The plan was ambitious and dangerous. A small fleet of specially modified human ships would use new stealth technology to approach the Vrex base undetected. Once there, they would plant explosives throughout the facility and escape before the Vrex realized what had happened. "When do we leave?" Lee asked. "Tomorrow," Yang replied. "We've been preparing for this for weeks. Everything is ready." As the meeting ended and the participants dispersed to make their final preparations, none of them knew that this mission would determine the fate of the war. Success would prove that the Vrex Empire could be truly defeated. Failure would likely mean the end of human resistance, but in the depths of space, another force was also preparing for what might be the final confrontation. Overlord Vrex Prime had assembled the largest battle fleet in the Empire's history. Over 1,000 ships representing the combined military might of hundreds of conquered worlds. "If these humans want a war," he declared to his assembled commanders, "then we will give them a war they will never forget. We will crush their spirit so completely that the galaxy will never again dare to resist the Vrex Empire." The stage was set for a battle that would reshape the balance of power in the universe. Neither side fully understood what they were risking, but both were committed to total victory. The turning point of the war was about to begin. The explosion that destroyed Kronos Fleet Base could be seen from 3 star systems away. When the charges that Captain Lee Hyun and his team had planted detonated simultaneously, they created a chain reaction that tore through the massive facility. Like lightning through a storm cloud, 50-7 Vrex warships were destroyed in an instant. Hundreds more were damaged beyond repair. The construction yards that had built the Empire's largest vessels were reduced to twisted metal and floating debris, but the victory came at a terrible cost. Lee's ship, the last to escape the base, had been caught in the explosion. Dr. Park Soo watched from the command center on Earth as his signal disappeared from the tactical display. The man who had defied the Vrex Empire in humanity's first contact was gone. "Confirmed casualties," reported the communication officer, his voice heavy with grief. "Captain Lee Hyen, Lieutenant Bei Jun, and the crews of ships Alpha 7 and Delta 3, 14 souls lost." Admiral Yang Min stood in silence for a long moment. They had achieved the impossible. They had struck at the heart of the Vrex Empire and won. But the price felt almost too heavy to bear. "Sir," Commander Kim Woo said quietly, "we're receiving reports from across the galaxy. The news of our success is spreading. 17 more systems have begun uprisings in the past 6 hours. Young nodded slowly. Lee's sacrifice had not been in vain. The destruction of Kronos Base was proof that the Vrex could be truly hurt. Enslaved species across the galaxy were seeing hope for the first time in centuries, but in Vrex space, Overlord Prime was experiencing something far more dangerous than loss. He was experiencing rage. "Impossible," he roared, his massive fists crushing the data tablet that contained the damage report. "How did they penetrate our most secure facility? How did they destroy half a fleet without firing a single shot?" Elder Vrex Gull stood nearby, his ancient face grave with concern. "My lord, we must consider the possibility that we have underestimated this enemy." "Underestimated?" Prime's voice shook the chamber. "They are a single species on the edge of nowhere. We have conquered 1,000 worlds. How could we underestimate them?" "Because we measured them by our standards," Gull replied carefully. "We assumed they would fight as we fight, think as we think, value what we value. We were wrong." General Turk, recently returned from another failed attempt to catch human raiders, approached with visible reluctance. "My lord, the situation is becoming critical. We now have active rebellions in 43 systems. Our forces are spread too thin to suppress them all effectively." "Then we will make an example that will end all rebellion," Prime declared. "Assemble the Grand Fleet, every ship, every weapon, every warrior in the Empire. We will go to the human system and destroy it so completely that the very atoms of their worlds will be scattered across space." Gull felt a chill of fear. "My lord, that would leave our conquered territories undefended. The rebellions could spread unchecked." "Let them," Prime snarled. "Once we destroy the humans and broadcast their annihilation across the galaxy, every enslaved species will remember why they fear us. The rebellions will end instantly." The order went out across the Vrex Empire. Every available warship was to converge on human space for the largest military operation in galactic history. Over 1,500 vessels began moving toward the Sol system. On Earth, the mood was strangely quiet despite their recent victory. Engineer Cho Yan worked frantically in her laboratory, trying to develop new weapons that might help against the massive fleet that was surely coming. "We can't win a direct battle," she said to Dr. Park Soo as they reviewed the latest intelligence reports. "Even with all our advantages, we simply don't have enough ships." Park nodded grimly. "The question is, do we need to win? Or do we just, need to survive long enough for the rebellions to succeed?" "What do you mean?" "Look at these reports from the outer territories," Park said, activating a galactic display. "The Vrex are pulling ships from everywhere to attack us. Some systems are being left with minimal guards. If the enslaved species coordinate their uprisings with our battle, they might be able to break free while the Vrex fleet is occupied here." "Commander." Kim Woo, who had taken over many of Lee's responsibilities, entered the laboratory with urgent news. "We're receiving a message from the Altair system. The rebels there have captured 3 Vrex cruisers and are requesting technical assistance to operate them." "Send them everything we have," Park replied immediately. "Ship manuals, tactical data, weapon specifications. If they can turn Vrex ships against the Empire, it could change everything." Similar requests were coming in from across the galaxy. Species that had been enslaved for centuries were suddenly fighting back with captured weapons and ships. The humans had done more than resist the Vrex. They had taught the galaxy how to resist, but the approaching Vrex fleet was still the largest military force ever assembled. Admiral Young Min knew that humanity's survival depended on fighting smarter, not harder. "We're not going to meet them in open battle," he announced to his senior staff. "We're going to make them come to us on our terms in our territory." "The asteroid belt?" asked Commander Kim. "Everywhere," Yang replied. "The asteroid belt? The moons of Jupiter? The ice fields of the outer planets? We're going to turn our entire system into a maze. Every rock, every moon, every piece of debris will be a potential hiding place for our ships." Engineer Cho activated a holographic display of the Sol system. "We've been preparing for this for months. Hidden weapons platforms, stealth mines, mobile defense stations. The Vrex expect us to meet them in space. Instead, we're going to turn our space into a trap." Dr. Park Soo had been analyzing Vrex psychology and behavior patterns. "There's something else we need to consider. Overlord. Prime is coming personally. This isn't just a military campaign for him anymore. It's personal. How does that help us?" Kim asked. "Personal emotions make people do stupid things," Park replied. "If we can make him angry enough, he might make mistakes." The plan was audacious and desperate. Instead of trying to protect Earth by keeping the battle away from it, they would draw the Vrex deep into the solar system. Every planet, every moon, every asteroid would become part of the battleground. "It means we're risking everything," Yang admitted. "If this plan fails, the Vrex will be able to destroy Earth at close range. There will be no escape, no second chance." "Then we better not fail," Kim replied grimly. As the human preparations continued, the Vrex Grand Fleet was making its final approach to the Sol system. Overlord Prime stood on the bridge of his flagship, the massive dreadnought Eternal Dominion, watching the human star grow larger on the viewscreen. "Final count, my lord," reported General Turk. 1,537 vessels, the largest fleet in our history." "Good," Prime replied. "These humans think they understand war. They will learn that there is a difference between winning battles and facing the full might of an empire." But Elder Gull, monitoring communications from across the galaxy, was receiving disturbing reports. "My lord, the rebellions are intensifying. The Corvani system has declared independence. The Altai rebels have destroyed 2 of our garrison fleets." "Irrelevant," Prime dismissed. "Once we finish with the humans, we will deal with the others." "My lord, if I may suggest a different approach," Gull said carefully. "Perhaps we could offer the humans terms. Allow them to exist as a client species in exchange for calling off the rebellions." Prime turned his massive head toward the Elder, his eyes blazing with fury. "Terms? These insects destroyed Kronos base. They have turned half the galaxy against us. There will be no terms. There will be only complete annihilation." The Vrex Grand Fleet entered the Sol system like a dark tide of destruction. But as they advanced toward the inner planets, they found something unexpected. The humans were not running. They were not massing their forces for a final desperate battle. Instead, they seemed to have vanished entirely. "Where are they?" Prime demanded as his sensors swept empty space. "Where are the human ships?" The answer came in the form of sudden explosions throughout the Vrex formation. Hidden mines, camouflaged among the asteroids, detonated as the alien ships passed. Small human vessels emerged from behind moons and planets, striking at the edge of the fleet before disappearing again. "They're everywhere and nowhere," Turk reported, his voice filled with confusion. "We're taking damage from all directions, but we can't pin down their main force." Prime realized that the humans had turned their entire star system into a weapon. Every piece of space debris could hide an explosive. Every moon could conceal a squadron of fighters. The Vrex, accustomed to open battle in empty space, found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to be found. "Continue toward their homeworld," Prime ordered. "Whatever games they're playing, they cannot hide an entire planet." But as the battered Vrex fleet finally reached Earth's orbit, they discovered that the humans had one more surprise waiting for them. The planet itself was armed. The final battle for humanity's survival was about to begin. The space around Earth had become a graveyard of metal and dreams. Hundreds of ships from both sides drifted in the darkness, their crews either dead or fighting desperately to survive. The largest battle in galactic history had been raging for 18 hours, and neither side was willing to surrender. Admiral Yang Min stood in the command center buried deep beneath the Korean mountains, watching as the tactical display updated with each passing moment. The Vrex Grand Fleet had lost over 400 ships, but they still outnumbered the humans 3-1. "Sir," reported Commander Kim Woo, "the orbital defense platforms are down to 30% ammunition. The lunar bases are reporting critical damage to their main guns." "And our fleet?" Young asked, though he already knew the answer would be grim. 62 ships remaining out of our original 150, Kim replied quietly. "But the asteroid belt squadrons are still operational, and the Jupiter Reconnaissance Group is moving to support us." Yang looked at the holographic display, showing Earth surrounded by the chaos of battle. His homeworld was scarred but still fighting. The massive rail guns that engineer Shou Yan had built into the planet's crust were still firing, sending projectiles the size of buildings into the Vrex formation. "Any word from the outer territories?" he asked Dr. Park Soo, who was monitoring communications from across the galaxy. "The rebellions are spreading faster than we hoped," she replied with the first smile Yang had seen from her in days. 47 systems have declared independence. The Altair rebels have captured an entire Vrex battle group. The Zarian uprising has taken control of 3 mining worlds. But the good news from distant stars meant little if Earth fell. Overlord Vrex Prime's flagship, the Eternal Dominion, was slowly advancing through the debris field toward the planet's surface. The massive dreadnought had absorbed incredible punishment but kept moving forward with deadly determination. "He's going to try to bombard the planet directly," observed Engineer Cho Yan, who had been coordinating the defense systems from her laboratory. "His ship is big enough to crack continents?" "Then we stop him," Yang said simply. "With what?" "We've thrown everything we have at that ship. It's still coming." Yang studied the tactical display for a long moment, his mind racing through possibilities. Then he activated the fleet communication system. "All ships, this is Admiral Yang. I want every vessel capable of movement to converge on the Vrex flagship. We're going to ram it." The command channel erupted with voices as ship captains protested the order. They were being asked to sacrifice their lives and their crews for a plan that might not even work. "Sir," Commander Kim said quietly, "you're asking them to commit suicide." "No," Yang replied, his voice carrying across the communication system. "I'm asking them to do what humans have always done when facing impossible odds. I'm asking them to choose freedom over survival." One by one, the remaining human ships acknowledged the order. Captain Song Min of the destroyer Incheon was the first to respond. "Admiral, this is Song. The Incheon is moving to attack position. It's been an honor serving with you all." The damaged human fleet began converging on the Eternal Dominion like arrows flying toward a target. The Vrex flagship's weapons blazed, destroying ship after ship, but the humans kept coming. On the bridge of his dreadnought, Overlord Prime watched in growing disbelief as the human vessels charged straight into his guns. "They're all insane," he muttered. "Why won't they preserve their lives?" Elder Gull, monitoring the battle from his position near the command station, finally understood what made humans so dangerous. "Because they're not fighting for their lives, my lord. They're fighting for something more important than life." "Nothing is more important than life?" Prime snarled. "To them, freedom is." The first human ship to reach the Eternal Dominion was a small frigate called the Soul. Its captain, Li Su, had lost her brother in the first battle against the Vrex. As her ship's engines overloaded and her vessel became a guided missile, her final transmission echoed across the battlefield. "For Captain Li Hyan, for everyone we've lost, for everyone who will come after us." The Soul struck the Vrex flagship amidships, its explosion tearing a massive hole in the dreadnought's armor. 3 more human ships followed, each one adding to the damage. The Eternal Dominion shuddered and began to list as its systems failed. "My lord," General Turk reported urgently, "we're losing structural integrity. The ship is breaking apart." Prime refused to believe what he was seeing. His flagship, the mightiest vessel in the Empire, was being destroyed by tiny ships crewed by beings who chose death over surrender. "How?" he demanded. "How do they have such strength?" The answer came from an unexpected source, Dr. Park Sue's voice crackled through the Vrex communication system as human technicians broadcast on their frequencies. "You never understood us," she said, her words reaching every Vrex ship in the system. "You think strength comes from size, from weapons, from fear. But real strength comes from believing in something worth dying for." The Eternal Dominion broke apart in a cascade of explosions that lit up the space around Earth like a second sun. Overlord Prime, the supreme ruler of the galaxy's deadliest empire, died without understanding how creatures he considered inferior had defeated him. With their leader gone and their fleet shattered, the remaining Vrex forces began to retreat. General Turk, now the highest-ranking survivor, gave the order to withdraw from human space, but the damage to the Vrex Empire was already irreversible. News of Prime's death spread across the galaxy faster than the retreating ships could carry it. On world after world, enslaved species rose up against their oppressors with renewed hope. The Altair system declared itself a free republic, the Zarian. Colonies expelled their Vrex overseers. The crystalline beings of Tau Ceti emerged from hiding after centuries of oppression. Everywhere, species that had forgotten what freedom felt like were remembering. On Earth, Admiral Yang Min emerged from the command bunker to see the dawn breaking over a world that was free. The cost had been enormous. Half of humanity's fleet was gone. Entire cities had been damaged by falling debris. Millions of people had lost friends and family in the fighting, but they had one. Engineer Cho Yun stood beside him, looking up at the sky where the wreckage of the great battle still glowed like falling stars. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now? We help put the galaxy back together," Yang replied. "The Vrex Empire is finished, but there are hundreds of species that will need help learning how to be free again." Dr. Park Sue joined them, carrying a tablet full of messages from across the galaxy. "The new Galactic Federation is asking us to send representatives to their founding Congress. They want to base their constitution on human principles of freedom and cooperation." Yang smiled for the first time in months. Captain Lee would have liked that. He always said we weren't fighting to become conquerors. We were fighting to remain free. Commander Kim Woo approached with the final battle report. Confirmed casualties from the entire campaign: 47,000 human military personnel, 12,000 civilians. But the Vrex Empire has officially surrendered. The war is over. As the 3 officers stood watching the sunrise, none of them spoke about the irony of their victory. The universe's deadliest species had been defeated not by superior weapons or overwhelming numbers, but by encountering the one thing they had never learned to fight against. They had been defeated by hope. Years later, historians would study the war between humanity and the Vrex Empire, trying to understand how such a small species had toppled such a mighty foe. They would analyze tactics and technologies, study casualty reports and battle formations, but they would miss the most important factor. The humans had won because they understood something that the Vrex, for all their power, had never learned. Some things are worth fighting for even when you cannot win. Some things are worth dying for even when death seems certain. The galaxy had been ruled by fear for over 1,000 years. It would now be rebuilt on the foundation of a simple human idea, that freedom is not something that can be given or taken away by others. It is something that lives in the heart of every thinking being, waiting to be awakened. The Vrex had been the universe's deadliest species, because they had never met anyone who refused to be afraid of them. Humanity had changed that forever. In the ruins of the Vrex homeworld, Elder Gull sat alone in what had once been the Empire's greatest library. Around him lay the records of 1,000 conquered worlds, the documentation of the most successful military empire in galactic history. He was writing the final entry in the Imperial records, the last chapter of a story that had lasted for over a millennium. The Vrex Empire ended not because we lacked strength, he wrote, but because we finally encountered a species that valued something more than strength. We measured our enemies by their weapons, their ships, their willingness to surrender. We never thought to measure them by their dreams. The humans taught us that the deadliest species in the universe is not the one with the sharpest claws or the biggest guns. It is the one that refuses to give up hope. As Gull finished writing and closed the record for the last time, he looked up at the stars through the broken dome of the library. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was learning to be free again. The age of the Vrex Empire was over. The age of freedom had begun. And it had all started because the universe's deadliest species had finally met the one they missed, a small, stubborn species called humanity that had never learned when to quit.